So I'm Dane Whitbeck. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Meshify, and we are a platform for connecting disconnected devices. Imagine that. So first I want to talk a little bit about the core pillars or tenets around why we built Meshify and why we built it the way we did. And then I'm going to speak a little bit about the architecture of a machine-to-machine application and where we fit in that stack. Next I'll speak a little bit about who is using Meshify today. And if you're interested in working with Meshify, what does that process look like? And then finally, a couple screenshots from applications built on Meshify. So what are the core pillars or tenets that we built Meshify on? First and foremost, if you're going to build a platform technology for connecting remote devices, it needs to be flexible. Of course, the more flexible it is, the more applications make sense on top of that platform. And so flexibility in how you build and work with the platform was one of the key pillars. Second has not been touched on enough, I don't think, today, and that's security. We live in a world that's being hacked every day. We hear it in the news all the time. And as a platform provider of a solution that connects remote devices, we view it as our responsibility to provide world-class security with that, to ensure that our customers can breathe easy, that real-world assets that are out in the world and performing real important jobs aren't at risk of being compromised. So another, of course, key tenet is speed. Speed in two aspects. Speed to market, of course, first and foremost, that you can build on top of this platform faster than you would otherwise to gain a competitive advantage. And secondly, just pure technological throughput. It should have speed and scalability that's unmatched. And then finally, balance. So balancing these things together to create a platform that's useful, flexible, and secure at the same time is what we do for a living. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture of a machine-to-machine application and how Meshify fits in. Of course, you start with your sensor or actuator, this thing that's disconnected that you want to bring online and get connected to the internet for some business case or business value. There's a lot of different ways for that device to become connected. It could have its own chipset that's already a cloud-connected chipset with cellular built in. You could have access to the firmware where you're able to access that chipset and then connect through an API. We're finding a lot of use cases for Meshify where that's not the case, where the device is inherently a kind of dumb device. It doesn't have any connectivity, and it needs a separate connected box to bring it online. So I'm going to focus in on this use case for now, but suffice it to say you can work with Meshify under the first use case as well. So rather than partnering and working with every device or gateway device that connects to a cellular or satellite under the sun, we took a selected subset of trusted devices from manufacturers that we knew well, and we tightly integrated Meshify's platform with these devices. Why did we do that? Think back to the pillars of what we built our solution around. We want world-class security. We don't want to have compromises happening on a Meshify-built solution, and this tight integration allows that kind of security to happen. It also allows speed, in that we know this hardware platform very well, and our software knows it very well. It allows the next layer to really happen. So we have, on top of this connectivity hardware, a cloud-managed driver solution. When you're connecting to an end device, you necessarily need a piece of software that connects with that end device and speaks to it. Managing that software is critical to the life cycle of your machine-to-machine application. And our framework takes that into account, allows you to cloud manage that driver, meaning remotely update it to groups of devices, sets of devices, or to all of your devices at once. We also take into account the connectivity piece, not that we're a network provider ourselves, but we view that as our responsibility to inform the users of what's going on with the connectivity status. And so, being that we work in a tightly integrated fashion with hardware, we're built to understand, is the cellular connectivity down? Are you not getting satellite coverage? Those kind of information is built into Meshify as a core first-class citizen. Next is, of course, when data first hits the Meshify cloud servers, it goes through a messaging bus where data is sent not just to people through emails and text messages, but of course it can be sent to other ERP or enterprise systems, other legacy pieces of software that need this information to act on. And so that is based on a rules-based engine that is configured completely within the tool, web-based tool itself, to determine what happens in a real-time fashion with this data that's coming in. And it can come in through massive throughput, and we have the capability to handle that. Time series data storage and retrieval. We're second to none in our use of the very best world-class database technology that can handle huge amounts of time series data and analyze it. Finally is a real key differentiator for Meshify, which is the user interface or application layer. This is optional. You can use this or you can not use it. Over 80% of customers using Meshify choose to use this content management system. I call it a content management system because, similar to something like a WordPress that you might be familiar with, you can actually edit the way the user interface looks within the tool itself. So it has an HTML editor built into the tooling. So you're not just using a tool that manages these remote connected devices. You're using a tool that is actually the product. It is the endpoint. It is what people touch and feel every day on web and mobile, and it can be delivered in your domain name and at your brand. And we find that that's one of the key, basically, differentiators between us and a lot of other service providers. And it's why a lot of people turn to us for speed to market. So, in summary of sort of this architecture, you can tell that we've built our system as a tightly integrated system. As opposed to taking a small swath of the M2M space, we view our job as much wider than that. And that's the only way we could find to accomplish world-class security balanced with that flexibility and speed. And it works really well. So, next slide. So, who's using Meshify? We're finding that we fit in really well in the industrial Internet of Things space. So as we look across the customers that have chosen Meshify as their connected device platform of choice, they have these things in common. They needed a time to market that was extremely quick. They needed uptime that was uncompromised, security that was world-class, flexibility to meet today's demands, as well as what will come tomorrow that's unforeseen. And they wanted scalability. Whether you're pushing 50 devices or 50,000, you should not have to worry when you choose a platform provider about scalability, which is why we're built on redundant cloud services in different zones in the world to make sure we have unmatched uptime. And finally, usability. An application is really only as useful as the user interface that comes with it. And by taking into account that content management layer, that top application layer, all from one solution provider, we really significantly cut the time of building a world-class user interface for your particular needs, showing fantastic graphs and charting and things that make sense for your use case, as well as map views and all of that stuff. So, which applications are better left to others today? I would say vehicle tracking applications. What I'll call low-value consumer product. When I say low value, it means there's not really somebody willing to pay a real dollar amount per device per month to monitor something like their toilet seat or toothbrush. And then finally, consumer wearables, which is a really interesting and cool space, but which we really just don't fit into that well today. We're a mission-driven company, and we're out to automate and connect devices because we feel it drives real business value. And we'll always be honest with you about where we fit and where we don't. So there's really no harm in ever coming and talking to us and finding out if we could meet your needs. So how does the process work? Assuming that you're interested in working with Meshify, how does that work and how does it actually manifest itself? Really simply, it starts with a meeting where we sit down in a 1-hour web consultation and we understand the business needs that you're driving for. Which systems are you looking to integrate with? And what do you need on the user interface level? What hardware makes sense for you? I mentioned we're tightly integrated with a lot of hardware suites. That doesn't mean that we sacrificed flexibility. We can literally tie in with devices that are Wi-Fi Ethernet-based connectivity, cellular, satellite-based, devices that have mesh networking built in, 900 megahertz or lower spectrum, a 2.4 gigahertz solution. We have hardware that's tightly integrated with this solution that matches all those and across a range of price points. And so we come up with a simple document after this meeting, assuming there's a fit on both ends, that we both believe we can bring you value and you believe that we can bring you value in the next step. We'll come up with a simple document that says these are the requirements that you've asked for as far as, what do you need to see in this solution. And technologically, this is very fast to get a first beta up. I mean, we're talking days here, 3 days, 4 days. We'll oftentimes ship a piece of connectivity hardware to you, have you plug it in there at your office, and we'll be working with it completely remotely and have the entire user interface up, available at a domain name specific for you, with your brand up on it, and graphs and charts and emails and text messages flying from that device in days. So from there, it sounds like it's done and you're ready to go, but that's not the case. We don't rush solutions to market that aren't ready. And so it's really about the champion of this project taking that beta that came together very quickly, showing it to internal and external stakeholders, and gathering feedback on it and finding out where its shortcomings are and where its strong points are and what we can do to improve it. And so there's a natural repeat cycle here. And the length of time of this varies really depending on you. It depends on the customer or the solution provider, our partner who's working with this solution, as to how long this process takes. We're finding the average right now being around 45 to 60 days, though, before we get to what we really want, which is launch, which is where literally through our system you start sending out emails, you're inviting in users, we're shipping product, we're connecting it, and the business value is being driven, which is where we all want to be. So a little bit about the company. We're based in Houston, Texas, which is really a hub for mission-critical infrastructure. And it plays a large part into why we've architected the solution the way that we have and our thinking around it. In the oil and gas industry specifically, there's no compromise on security, and there never will be, at least with the customers that we work with. So a little bit more, just some screenshots here, cool graphs and charts you can see from flow meters, multiple pieces of data being viewed against one another. If you look at this one, this is a really cool one that we had a lot of people asking for. How do you visualize data from machine data across a long time span and show the state of it quickly? At the bottom of the screen there, you can see a really cool visualization of the status of a device over time and what state it's been in over several days, which of course is flexible with the calendar. You can select the days and show that kind of interface. We have a whole bunch of different visualizations that come out of the box with a Meshify solution. And because it's HTML editing capable, you can literally develop any type of visualization that you want within the interface itself. So we have a lot more to show and tell than we're capable of doing in this 15-minute segment. That's why we got a booth here at the show. We'd love for you to come by, handle the hardware that we use every day, play with real-world solutions and connected sensors and actuators that are there, and most importantly, the web and mobile user interfaces that come with a Meshify solution, and get a real feel for what it is that we do there at the booth. Again, we're Meshify, the connected device app engine. I really appreciate your time, and that's it. Thanks.